She was so hungry she agreed to dance, just for a piece of bread. Surrounded by laughter, phones recording, and people who saw her pain as entertainment, she kept moving, even as tears streamed down her face. But in the middle of the mockery, one man in the crowd suddenly froze, because he recognized something no one else did. And what he did next would change her life forever. Hello, fam. Welcome to True Love Stories, where we share interesting and intriguing stories. Please do well to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do not forget to like and share with your loved ones. Now let's dive into the story. Atlanta moved like it always did, fast, loud, alive. Headlights streamed down Peachtree like rivers of white and red. Music leaked from passing cars, and somewhere in the distance, sirens sang their usual song. The city didn't stop for anyone. Not for struggle. Not for exhaustion. And definitely not for people like Nia. She sat on the edge of a curb beneath a flickering streetlight, its dim glow cutting weakly through the night. The concrete beneath her was cold, but she barely felt it anymore. Her body had learned to ignore discomfort. What it couldn't ignore, what refused to be silenced, was the hunger. It twisted deep in her stomach, sharp and persistent, like something clawing at her from the inside. She pressed her hand against it, curling slightly forward, her breath catching as another wave hit. "Just get through it," she whispered to herself, her voice dry, barely audible. But it had been days. Not the kind of hunger you fix with a snack or a skipped meal. This was different. This was the kind that made your head light, your hands weak, your thoughts slow and scattered. The kind that made everything else, pride, comfort, even fear, start to fade behind one simple need. Food. Nia leaned her head back against the pole behind her and closed her eyes for a moment. She could hear laughter somewhere across the street, bright, careless, full. It clashed with everything she felt. She opened her eyes and looked down at herself. Her hoodie, once soft and fitted, now hung loosely, stretched and faded from wear. The sleeves were slightly frayed at the edges. Her jeans had a tear at the knee that hadn't been there when she first bought them. Her sneakers, once white, had dulled into a tired gray, the soles thinning from miles of walking. She ran a hand through her hair, pausing when her fingers caught in the tangles. She didn't have the energy to fix it. This wasn't who she used to be. 2 years ago, Nia had structure. She woke up early, worked long shifts at a nursing home, and came home tired, but stable. She had her own small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was hers. Her space. Her peace. And every month, without fail, she sent money back home. At first, it felt right. Necessary. Her mother needed help. Bills, rent, unexpected expenses that always seemed urgent. Nia didn't question it. She adjusted her own life instead. Skipped small things. Took extra shifts. Told herself it was temporary. But temporary stretched. The requests didn't slow down, they grew. And somewhere along the way, Nia stopped keeping track of how much she was giving and how much she was losing. Her rent fell behind first. Then the notices came. Then the eviction. She remembered standing in her empty apartment, the echo of her footsteps replacing what used to feel like home. A duffel bag at her feet. A phone full of missed calls from her mother asking for more. Even then, she still sent what she could. Now, sitting on that curb, she let out a quiet, almost bitter breath. "I should have stopped," she murmured. But regret didn't fill an empty stomach. Another wave of hunger hit her, stronger this time, and she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her body folding in on itself. Her vision blurred slightly at the edges. That's when she smelled it. Food. Not faint. Not imagined. Real. Rich, warm, unmistakable. Her head lifted slowly, her senses sharpening despite her exhaustion. Across the street, above a sleek glass building, lights glowed from a rooftop lounge. Music pulsed faintly from above, and every now and then, the door opened, just enough for the scent to escape. Grilled meat. Butter. Fresh bread. Her stomach reacted instantly, tightening so sharply it made her inhale. She stared at the building. People moved in and out, dressed well, laughing, full of life. The kind of place she would have never thought twice about before. The kind of place she now felt completely removed from. "I can't go in there," she said under her breath. The words came automatically, like a rule, like something already decided. But her body didn't agree. Another car passed. Another burst of laughter echoed faintly from above. And the smell, it lingered, wrapped around her, pulling at something deeper than logic. Her hand tightened slightly against her jeans. Just bread, she whispered, almost like she was negotiating with herself. You're not asking for much. Just bread. Her heart started to beat a little faster, not from movement, but from the decision forming. Because it wasn't just about food. It was about what she would have to give up to ask for it. Pride. Dignity. The last fragile pieces of who she used to be. Nia looked down at her hands, dry, slightly trembling, marked by everything she had been through these past months. Then she looked back at the building. Bright. Warm. Alive. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she pushed herself up from the curb. Her legs protested at first, stiff and tired, but she steadied herself, adjusting her hoodie instinctively, as if it could somehow make her look more presentable. It didn't, but she stepped forward anyway. One step, then another. Crossing the street felt longer than it should have. Each passing car, each glance from a stranger, made her more aware of herself, of how she looked, how she must seem. Out of place. Unwanted. Still she kept going. Because hunger doesn't wait for comfort. By the time she reached the entrance, the music was louder, the lights brighter, the contrast sharper. She paused just outside, her hand hovering slightly at her side. This was the moment. The point where she could still turn around. Go back to the curb. Back to the cold. Back to the hunger. Nia swallowed hard. Then, quietly, she said it again, this time not as a question, but as a decision. Just bread. And with that, she stepped inside, unknowing that this single choice would pull her into a moment that would change everything. The rooftop lounge sat high above the city like a world untouched by struggle. Glass railings framed a sweeping view of Atlanta's skyline, lights stretching endlessly into the night. Inside, everything shimmered. Designer heels clicked against polished floors. Gold chains caught the light, and laughter rose effortlessly over the bass-heavy music. It was a space built for people who had never had to ask for anything twice. Nia felt it the second she stepped out of the stairwell. The air smelled like expensive perfume and grilled food, steak, butter, fresh bread. The scent hit her so hard her knees nearly buckled. For a moment, she just stood there, taking it in, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. Then the stares began. They weren't subtle. Eyes dragged over her from head to toe, lingering on her worn hoodie, the frayed edges of her jeans, her tired sneakers, her unkempt hair. Conversations didn't stop, but they shifted. Curiosity turned into amusement in a matter of seconds. Near the entrance, a security guard raised an eyebrow, already stepping forward, but a sharply dressed man in a tailored black jacket lifted his hand with a grin. "Let her in," he said casually, his voice just loud enough. "She not hurting nobody." A few people nearby chuckled. Nia didn't fully understand why, but she nodded slightly and stepped past them, her heart beating faster now. Not from fear exactly, but from the weight of knowing she didn't belong. Still, she reminded herself why she came. Just bread. That's it. She moved carefully through the crowd, trying not to draw attention, though it felt impossible. Every step felt louder than it should have. Every glance felt heavier. She spotted a long table near the bar, platters of food laid out carelessly, more than enough for everyone there, and then some. Her throat tightened. Summoning what little courage she had left, she approached a woman in a sleek gold dress holding a champagne flute. The woman was laughing at something on her phone, surrounded by two friends who looked just as polished, just as untouchable. "Excuse me," Nia said softly. The woman barely heard her. Nia swallowed, forcing her voice a little louder. "Excuse me. I'm sorry. Could I just have some bread? I haven't eaten in." The woman turned this time, blinking once as if trying to process what she was seeing. Then her lips curled into a slow, disbelieving smile. "Did she just say bread?" she said, glancing at her friends. They laughed immediately. Not kindly. Within seconds, the energy shifted. People nearby leaned in, drawn by the tone more than the words. A man stepped closer, holding a drink in one hand, his expression amused. "Wait, wait," he said. "Say that again." Nia felt her chest tighten, but she forced the words out. "I'm just asking for some bread." "Just bread," he repeated, grinning as if it were the funniest thing he'd heard all night. Phones started coming out, subtle at first, then not so subtle. Someone angled their camera. Another nudged their friend. "Yo, this wild," someone whispered, already recording. A loose circle formed around her, not close enough to touch, but close enough to trap. The music kept playing, but now it felt distant, like everything had narrowed down to this moment. The man in the black jacket stepped forward again, tilting his head as he looked her over. "You want bread?" he asked. Nia nodded, her fingers curling into the fabric of her hoodie. He smiled wider. "Dance for it." The words hung in the air. At first, she thought she misheard him. "What? Dance?" Another voice chimed in from behind her. "It's a party, right? Earn it." A ripple of laughter spread through the group. Nia shook her head slightly, instinctively taking a small step back. I don't dance. Please, I'm hungry." "Exactly," someone said. "So dance." More laughter. The circle tightened, not physically, but emotionally. There was no warmth in it, no invitation. Just expectation. Nia glanced around, searching for a single face that might soften, a single person who might say, "That's enough." There wasn't one. Her stomach growled again, loud enough that a few people heard it. "Oh, she's serious," someone said, laughing harder. The embarrassment burned through her, hot and suffocating. Her eyes stung, but she forced herself to breathe. "Walk away," a voice in her head whispered. But where? Back to the cold sidewalk? Back to the emptiness twisting inside her? Her pride and her hunger collided in that moment, and hunger won. Slowly, reluctantly, she stepped forward into the center of their circle. The music seemed louder now, the bass vibrating through the floor and into her bones. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "Come on," the man urged, gesturing dramatically like he was introducing a performer. "Let's see what you got." Nia closed her eyes for a brief second. Then she moved. Not like someone enjoying music. Not like someone free. Like someone trying to survive. Her movements were small at first, stiff, uncertain. But the crowd reacted immediately, laughter, clapping, exaggerated cheers that felt more like mockery than encouragement. "Look at her. She really doing it. This crazy." Each word chipped away at her, but she kept going. Because somewhere in that room, on that table, was a piece of bread. And right now, that was everything. At first, Nia tried to disappear inside the music. If she could just focus on the rhythm, on the beat vibrating through the floor, on the distant hum of the speakers, maybe the rest of it wouldn't feel so sharp. Maybe the laughter would blur into background noise. Maybe the eyes wouldn't feel like they were peeling her apart layer by layer. But it didn't work. Nothing drowned it out. Every sound landed clearly, cruelly. "Yo, she really out here performing for bread. Somebody tip her." "Nah, don't give it yet, this too funny." The words came from all directions, overlapping, building on each other. Some people laughed openly, heads thrown back like this was the highlight of their night. Others covered their mouths, whispering just loud enough to still be heard. And then there were the ones with phones, quiet, focused, capturing everything. Recording her worst moment like it was entertainment. Nia kept moving. Her body felt heavy, disconnected, like she was watching herself from somewhere outside. Her arms swayed awkwardly, her feet stepping out of sync with the music. It didn't matter. They weren't watching for skill. They weren't watching for rhythm. They were watching for humiliation. Her throat tightened as she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of the glass railing. Just for a second. A blurred version of who she used to be. The girl staring back didn't look like someone who once had a steady job, a routine, a sense of direction. She looked small, exposed, hungry in every sense of the word. "Do a spin," someone shouted. "Yes, spin." A few people clapped in rhythm, mocking encouragement. Nia hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough for the crowd to notice. "Don't stop now," You want that bread or not? The reminder hit harder than anything else. Her stomach twisted again, painfully, as if to answer for her. So she spun. It wasn't graceful. Her balance faltered slightly, and a fresh wave of laughter erupted, louder than before. Look at that! She about to fall. This better than TV. Her chest tightened, breath coming faster now. Heat rushed to her face, but her hands felt cold. Numb. Still she kept going, because stopping meant facing them. And facing them meant breaking completely. The song felt like it dragged on forever, each second stretching under the weight of their attention. Her legs began to ache, her movements slowing despite her effort to keep up. Then finally, the music shifted. The song ended. Nia stopped immediately, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to catch her breath. For a brief moment, there was silence, not because they respected her, but because they were waiting. She looked at them, eyes glassy, voice barely steady. Please, can I have the bread now? It wasn't just a question. It was everything she had left. A man near the front clapped slowly, a smirk spreading across his face. That was something, he said, dragging out the words. But we not done yet. A few people laughed again, softer this time, but sharper. Nia's heart sank. What? She whispered, her voice almost lost under the low hum of the crowd. The DJ, catching on to the mood, leaned into his controls. The next track dropped suddenly, faster, louder, heavier bass that vibrated through the entire rooftop. Round 2, someone shouted. Let's see some energy this time, another added. Yeah, you gotta earn it for real. The circle tightened again, not physically, but in presence. In pressure. Nia didn't move. Her body felt like it had reached its limit. Her legs trembled, her arms hung at her sides, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide the tears. One slipped down her cheek, then another, tracing quiet paths through the dust on her skin. The music pounded on. Come on, the man in the black jacket urged, clapping to the beat. Don't get shy now. I can't, she said softly, almost to herself. But they heard it, and they laughed. Not loudly this time. Worse. Low. Amused. Dismissive. Like her breaking point was just another part of the show. Nia's vision blurred as more tears gathered, her chest tightening with something heavier than hunger now. Shame wrapped around her, thick and suffocating. The kind that makes you want to disappear completely. She looked around one more time. Still no kindness. Still no one stepping in. Just faces waiting. Expecting. Enjoying. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, nails pressing into her palms as if she could anchor herself to something solid. Then, slowly, painfully, she started to move again. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt like she had no other choice. And as she moved to the faster beat, her tears fell freely now, no longer hidden, no longer held back. She wasn't dancing anymore. She was unraveling, piece by piece, in front of people who saw her pain as entertainment. And somehow, that hurt even more than the hunger ever could. At the far end of the rooftop, removed from the chaos but not entirely untouched by it, Michael Hale stood near the glass railing, a lowball glass resting in his hand. The city stretched out behind him, Atlanta glowing in gold and white, alive with motion. But his attention had drifted away from the skyline and the conversation in front of him. I'm telling you, the deal closes next quarter if we... Michael nodded absently at the man speaking, but his focus had shifted. It started as a feeling. Subtle. Uneasy. The kind of shift in energy you notice before you understand it. The laughter. At first, it blended into the atmosphere. Just another sound in a room full of people enjoying themselves. But then it changed. It sharpened. It lingered too long. It repeated in a way that didn't sound like joy anymore. It sounded like something else. Michael's brow furrowed slightly as he turned his head, eyes scanning the crowd. That's when he saw the circle. Not unusual for a party, but something about it felt wrong. Too tight. Too focused. Phones raised. Bodies angled inward like spectators at a show. And then he saw her. Nia. At the center. Moving. Not dancing, at least not in the way people dance when they're free. There was no rhythm in her expression, no life in her eyes. Her movements were strained, forced, like every step cost her something. And the people around her, laughing. Michael stilled completely. The conversation beside him faded into nothing. For a split second, he didn't move. Not because he didn't understand what he was seeing, but because he did. Completely. Too completely. It hit something in him he hadn't felt in years. A memory. A younger version of himself, standing outside a convenience store, counting the change in his pocket, trying to figure out if he could afford food without falling short on something else. The looks people gave him back then. The way some spoke to him, like he was less. He had clawed his way out of that life. Built something massive. Untouchable. But this reminded him exactly how thin the line used to be. And how cruel people could be when they thought they were above it. Michael's jaw tightened as the music shifted again, faster now, and the laughter followed, rising in approval. He saw Nia hesitate, saw the tears on her face catching the light, and something in him snapped into clarity. "Excuse me," he said, cutting off the man mid-sentence without even looking back. He set his glass down on a nearby table and started walking. Not fast, not rushed, but direct, purposeful. The closer he got, the clearer everything became. The comments, the mocking claps, the phones capturing every second. The man in the black jacket stood near the front, grinning like he had orchestrated the whole thing. Michael stepped into the edge of the circle. At first, no one noticed. Then someone did a double take. "Yo, that's..." The reaction spread quickly, like a ripple. Conversations faltered. A few phones lowered. The laughter didn't stop all at once, but it weakened, confused by his presence. Michael didn't acknowledge any of them. His eyes were on Nia. She was still moving, barely now, her energy drained, her face streaked with tears she no longer tried to hide. She looked like she might collapse at any second. And still no one had stopped it. Michael stepped fully into the center. "Stop the music." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It cut clean through the noise, through the bass, through the laughter. The DJ hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then quickly pulled the track down. The sudden silence felt heavier than the music had. Nia slowed, then stopped, her body swaying slightly as if it didn't quite know what to do without the rhythm forcing it forward. The entire rooftop seemed to hold its breath. Michael turned his head slightly, just enough for his gaze to land on the man in the black jacket. "What is this?" he asked. The question wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The man shifted, his confidence flickering. She asked for food, man. We was just having a little fun." "Fun," Michael repeated, his tone even. There was something in the way he said it that made the word sound hollow. He didn't wait for an explanation. Didn't want one. Instead, he stepped closer to Nia. Up close, the details were impossible to ignore. The slight tremble in her hands, the exhaustion in her posture, the way her eyes flickered up at him uncertainly, like she wasn't sure if this was help or just another part of the humiliation. Michael's expression softened. Not with pity, with recognition. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. Nia blinked, her breath uneven. For a moment, she didn't respond, like the words didn't fully reach her. No one had said anything like that to her all night. No one had given her a choice. Michael extended his hand, not forcefully, not urgently. Just there. Steady. An option. It took her a second. Then slowly she placed her hand in his. Her fingers were cold. Light. Like she wasn't fully anchored to the moment yet. Michael closed his hand gently around hers and turned, guiding her toward the edge of the circle. No one stopped them. No one spoke. The same people who had been laughing moments ago now stepped aside, creating space without being asked. Eyes followed them, some curious, some uncomfortable, some avoiding eye contact altogether. The energy had shifted completely. What had been entertainment now felt exposed. Ugly. As they walked, one voice tried weakly to recover the mood. It wasn't that serious. Michael didn't even look back. Because to him it was. It always had been. They reached the exit of the rooftop, the noise behind them fading with each step. The cool night air met them again, quieter, cleaner. Nia's steps faltered slightly once they were out, the adrenaline wearing off, leaving only exhaustion behind. Michael didn't let go of her hand. Not yet, because he understood something the others didn't. Sometimes the hardest part isn't surviving the moment. It's what comes right after, when your body realizes it's finally allowed to stop. The city felt different once they left the rooftop behind. The music, the laughter, the cruelty, it all faded into the background, swallowed by distance and the steady hum of the streets below. Cars passed by in soft waves, headlights stretching across the pavement. The night air carried a coolness that felt almost gentle against Nia's skin, a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat of humiliation she had just escaped. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Nia walked beside Michael, her steps unsteady, like her body hadn't fully caught up with what had just happened. Her hand was still in his, though loosely now, as if she could pull away at any second, but she didn't. She didn't trust her voice yet. Didn't trust that if she tried to speak, everything she had been holding in wouldn't spill out all at once. Michael glanced at her briefly, noticing the way her shoulders curved inward, the way she seemed smaller now. Not physically, but emotionally, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. "I'm sorry," he said finally. His voice was calm, steady, not heavy with guilt, but grounded in sincerity. Nia shook her head faintly, her eyes fixed on the sidewalk ahead. "You didn't do anything." "I was still there," he replied. "And I didn't stop it sooner." That made her pause. It was such a simple statement, but it carried something unfamiliar. Accountability. Most people would have laughed it off, ignored it, blamed someone else. He didn't. Nia swallowed, her throat tight. I just needed food," she said quietly, almost like she was explaining herself, justifying her choices. Michael nodded once. "I know." And the way he said it, it didn't sound like pity. It sounded like understanding. They stopped in front of a restaurant that seemed completely out of place for someone like her. The building stood tall and elegant, warm light spilling from inside onto the sidewalk. Through the large windows, she could see polished tables, well-dressed guests, waiters moving with practiced ease. It looked expensive. Too expensive. Nia hesitated immediately, her hand slipping from his as she took a small step back. "I can't go in there." Michael turned slightly toward her. "Why not?" She let out a soft, almost humorless breath. "Look at me." It wasn't said with self-pity. Just fact. Her clothes were worn, her shoes tired, her hair undone. She didn't match anything about that place. Michael followed her gaze for a moment, taking in the contrast. Then he looked back at her. "You belong anywhere you decide to walk into," he said. Simple. Certain. Like it wasn't up for debate. Nia searched his face, waiting for a hint of sarcasm, of performance. Anything that would make it feel less real. There was nothing. Just quiet confidence. After a moment, he reached for the door and opened it, stepping slightly aside to give her space to choose. Not pulling her. Not forcing her. Letting her decide. That mattered more than she expected. Nia took a breath, then stepped inside. The shift was immediate. Conversation softened. A few heads turned, not as sharply as before, but enough for her to feel it. She instinctively lowered her gaze, her body tensing again, bracing for judgment. But Michael walked beside her like none of it existed. Like this was normal. Like she was meant to be there. A host approached, his expression professional, though briefly flickering with surprise before settling. "Good evening," he said. "Table for two?" Michael nodded. Yes. No hesitation. No explanation. They were seated near a window, the city lights stretching out behind them like a backdrop. The table was set with polished silverware, folded napkins, glasses that caught and reflected the soft lighting. Nia sat stiffly at first, her hands resting uncertainly in her lap. She wasn't used to this. Didn't know where to look. Didn't know how to act. But then the menu came, and everything else faded. Her eyes scanned it quickly at first, then slower, more carefully. So many options. Meals she hadn't had in years. Meals she had never had at all. Michael noticed. Order whatever you want, he said. She hesitated. I don't need all that. Just something small is fine. Michael shook his head slightly. Whatever you want, he repeated. Not indulgent. Not dismissive. Just firm. Nia looked back at the menu, her fingers tightening slightly against the edge of it. For a moment, she felt overwhelmed, not by the choices, but by what they represented. Freedom. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. When the waiter returned, her voice was quiet, but steady enough. She ordered. Not extravagantly, but enough. Michael ordered as well, then leaned back slightly, giving her space again. The wait felt longer than it probably was. Nia's body was still catching up, adrenaline slowly draining, leaving behind exhaustion so deep it settled into her bones. Her hands rested on the table now, fingers loosely intertwined, as if grounding herself. And then, the food arrived. The smell hit her first. Warm. Rich. Real. Her chest tightened instantly. Plates were set down in front of her, carefully prepared, beautifully presented, but none of that mattered. All she saw was food. Actual food. For a second, she just stared, like she needed to confirm it wasn't going to be taken away. Then her hand moved. Slow at first. Then faster. She picked up her fork, took a bite, and everything broke. The taste alone was enough to undo her. Tears welled up immediately, spilling over before she could stop them. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to eat normally, but the hunger, the relief, the exhaustion, it all collided at once. Her shoulders shook slightly as she kept eating, tears falling freely now, landing quietly against the table. She didn't apologize, didn't try to hide it. She couldn't. Michael didn't interrupt, didn't stare, didn't offer empty reassurances. He simply sat there, present but unobtrusive, giving her the dignity of experiencing that moment without turning it into something else. Because he understood. Hunger wasn't just physical. It was emotional, psychological, lingering. And moments like this, when it finally eased, weren't clean or composed. They were messy, real, necessary. Nia ate until the sharp edge of her hunger softened, then faded, then disappeared completely, replaced by something unfamiliar. Fullness, not just in her stomach, but somewhere deeper. She leaned back slightly, her breathing finally steady, her body relaxing in a way it hadn't in days. For the first time that night, for the first time in a long time, she felt human again. And sitting across from her, Michael didn't look at her like a project or a problem. He looked at her like a person. And that quiet shift, that small, almost invisible change in how she was seen, was where everything truly began to change. That night didn't end with the meal. It could have. For most people, it would have. A kind gesture, a generous moment, a story to tell later about helping someone in need, and then life moving on, untouched. But that's not what happened. Because when Nia stepped back out into the night with Michael, something had already shifted, and neither of them treated it like something temporary. The city was quieter now, the late hours softening its edges. The sharp noise of earlier had faded into a low, steady hum. For the first time that night, Nia wasn't thinking about where she would find her next meal. But she was thinking about everything else. What happens now? She asked. The question came out before she could stop it. Not demanding, not expectant, just honest. Michael didn't answer right away. He walked a few steps in silence, his hands in his coat pockets, his gaze forward, not avoiding the question, but considering it carefully. Now, he said, we figure out what you actually need. Nia frowned slightly. I needed food. You needed food tonight, he corrected gently. But that's not the whole problem. She looked down at the sidewalk as they walked, her expression tightening just a little. He wasn't wrong, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way she hadn't fully faced. Tell me how you got here, Michael said. There was no pressure in his tone, no interrogation, just an opening. And for a moment, Nia hesitated. Not because she didn't want to speak, but because she hadn't really told the full truth out loud before. Not all of it. Not in a way that connected the pieces. I had a job, she began slowly. At a nursing home. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Michael nodded slightly, listening. I had my own place. Small, but mine. She paused, her voice dipping. And my mom, she needed help. Bills, rent, things like that. At first, it was just a little. Her hands tightened slightly at her sides. Then it kept being something. Every month. Sometimes more than I could afford. But she's my mother, so I sent it. Michael's expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. And then, he asked. Nia let out a quiet breath. Then I started falling behind. On my own stuff. Rent, mostly. A bitter edge crept into her voice now. I kept thinking I'd catch up. That it would balance out. It didn't. I lost the apartment, she said flatly. The words landed heavier than she expected. I was staying with a friend for a while, but that didn't last. She shrugged slightly, though there was nothing casual about it. After that, it was just wherever I could. Silence stretched between them for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was absorbing. You kept sending her money? Michael asked. Nia didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, yeah. Even after you lost everything? Her jaw tightened. She said she needed it. Michael stopped walking. Nia took another step before realizing, then turned back slightly. He looked at her, not with judgment, not with disbelief, but with a kind of clarity that cut through the noise of everything she'd been telling herself. That's not support, he said. That's dependency. And it cost you your stability. The words were firm. Not cruel. But they didn't soften the truth. Nia looked away, her chest tightening again. But this time, it wasn't from hunger or humiliation. It was recognition. I didn't want to be a bad daughter, she said. Michael's voice lowered slightly. And in trying not to be that, you abandoned yourself. That one landed. Hard. Nia swallowed, her eyes stinging again. But she didn't look away this time. Because deep down she knew. He wasn't wrong. They stood there for a moment, the weight of that realization settling in. Cars passed, distant and indifferent, the city continuing as it always did. Then Michael shifted slightly, his tone easing, but not losing its focus. You don't need someone to save you, he said. You need a way to rebuild. Nia blinked. I don't even know where to start. That's fine, he replied. We start simple. He began counting it out, not like a lecture, but like a plan being formed in real time. First, you need stability. A place to stay that isn't temporary. She nodded slowly. Second, income. Not quick money, consistent money. Another nod. Third, he paused briefly, boundaries. Nia let out a small, almost breathless laugh at that. Yeah, I'm not great at those. We'll fix that, he said. Not you should. Not you could. We will. That difference mattered. Over the next few days, Michael followed through, not with grand gestures, but with intentional ones. He connected Nia with a transitional housing program. Not hidden away, not unsafe, but structured and clean, a place designed to help people get back on their feet. He helped her prepare for interviews. Real ones, not favors handed out to make himself feel good. They sat down together, going over her experience, refining how she spoke about it, rebuilding her confidence piece by piece. You're not starting from nothing, he told her during one of those conversations. You have work history. You have resilience. You just need to reconnect to it. And slowly she did. The first interview didn't go perfectly. The second was better. By the third, something had shifted. She walked in differently, spoke differently, held herself differently. And when she got the job, a steady position at a rehabilitation center, it didn't feel like luck. It felt earned. Weeks passed. Then months. Nia wasn't the same person who had stood in the middle of that rooftop. She carried herself with more weight now. Not heaviness, but presence. Her clothes changed, her posture changed, her voice found its strength again. But more importantly, her decisions changed. When her mother called, asking for money again, Nia didn't answer the same way. I can't send anything right now, she said, her voice steady despite the tension on the other end. I'm getting myself stable first. The guilt was still there, but it didn't control her anymore. That was new. And Michael? He stayed consistent. Not hovering. Not controlling. Present. They met occasionally, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just to check in. Their conversations shifted over time, moving away from survival and into growth, ideas, perspective. There was no pressure to define what they were. They didn't need to, because what they built wasn't based on a single moment of rescue. It was built on respect, on honesty, on seeing each other clearly. One evening, months later, Nia stood outside a small but comfortable apartment, her apartment, keys in hand. She paused before unlocking the door, looking out at the street, at the life moving around her. For a brief moment, her mind drifted back, to the rooftop, to the music, to the laughter that once felt like it would break her. Then she looked at the keys again, and smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was hers. When she stepped inside, she wasn't the girl who danced for bread anymore. She was someone who had rebuilt herself, piece by piece, decision by decision. And somewhere in the city, not far but not too close, Michael continued his life too. Not as a savior, not as a hero, just as someone who, in one critical moment, chose not to look away. And in doing that, helped change the direction of someone else's story. Not by giving them a life, but by reminding them they still had the power to build one. Finally, we have come to the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, do well to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.